This lounge is for first-class passengers only. You need to leave, now. Derek Whitmore grabbed the worn canvas tote from the armrest. He dropped it near the entrance. The thud echoed. Contents spilled. Paperback, water bottle, glasses case. He didn't bend to help, just pointed at the exit like shooting a stray dog. Around Naomi Grant, the VIP lounge gleamed with wealth. Hermes bags, Tom Ford suits, Chanel dresses. She sat among them in a faded Yale sweatshirt, dark jeans, white sneakers, no jewelry. 4 empty seats surrounded her. No one sat close. Derek's voice carried. Look around you. Everyone here belongs. You clearly don't. 30 heads turned. 3 phones started recording. Naomi stood slowly, collecting her things. Her voice stayed quiet. May I speak with your supervisor? Derek's smile sharpened. I am the supervisor. Security's on their way. Have you ever been judged so completely that strangers felt entitled to humiliate you in public? 11:47 a.m. 10 minutes until boarding. Derek had watched Naomi enter 5 minutes earlier. Everyone else in the lounge fit. Designer luggage, tailored clothing, confident strides. She didn't. He'd whispered to his staff member, a young blonde woman in uniform. How'd she get in? Did you check her? The woman shrugged. Automatic gate, I think. Right. They always find a way. Now Derek stood over Naomi's scattered belongings, arms crossed. Ma'am, I need to see your boarding pass. Naomi handed him her phone. Digital boarding pass displayed clearly. Derek barely glanced. This lounge requires premium credentials. American Express Centurion. Priority Pass Prestige. You have neither. Actually, I have both. Naomi reached for her tote. Derek raised his palm. Ma'am, I've been doing this for 12 years. I know who belongs here. A woman in a Burberry coat leaned toward her husband. Something's off. She doesn't look right for this place. Derek's 2 staff members exchanged glances. One suppressed a smile. Naomi's phone lit up. Board meeting 2 p.m. flashed across the screen. Her tote bag, worn but quality canvas, had embossed initials NEG. The book she'd been reading, The New Jim Crow, had a Harvard Business School bookmark visible. Across the lounge, Maya Lane looked up from her laptop. 29, Asian-American tech journalist with 50,000 Twitter followers. She watched Derek block Naomi's view of the buffet. I watched him tap his watch deliberately. Maya opened Instagram, started a live stream. At Maya Speaks Truth going live. VIP lounge manager racially profiling a woman at Gate C. Viewer count 47, 89, 156. Derek stepped closer. Look, I don't have time for this. Security is on their way. He gestured at Naomi's sweatshirt, her sneakers. Our clientele expects a certain standard. An elderly white man in a cashmere cardigan spoke up. Maybe she's lost, young man. These lounges can be confusing. Derek nodded gratefully. Exactly, sir. I'm just trying to help. Naomi stood, gathering her spilled items with careful dignity. I understand you're doing your job. May I show you my credentials? I told you, security's coming. Derek's voice rose. This needs to stop being difficult. The overhead PA crackled. Flight 4127 to London Heathrow, now boarding Zone 1, Gate C14. Derek smiled. There's your flight. Coach boarding is down the hall. Naomi checked her watch. The attentive observer might notice it was a Patek Philippe Nautilus, understated but extraordinary. 9 minutes, she said quietly. 2 uniformed officers arrived. 1 black man, 1 Latina woman, Officer James Porter and Officer Carmen Ruiz. Derek briefed them loudly. She's refusing to leave. No valid credentials for this lounge. Porter looked uncomfortable. Ma'am, can you show us your boarding pass? Naomi handed her phone to Porter, not Derek. Porter's eyes widened, reading the screen. This shows Seat 1A. That's... Derek interrupted. Probably a screenshot from Google. Check the barcode. Porter scanned it. Valid, first class, Gate C14. Derek's face reddened. Well, that still doesn't give her lounge access. She needs... Naomi reached into her tote, pulled out a slim leather card holder. Derek snatched it from her hand. The lounge went silent. Maya's live stream viewer count hit 2,847. Derek flipped it open. American Express Centurion card. The black card. Priority Pass Prestige, Platinum Tier. His jaw tightened. But instead of apologizing, he held the cards up to the light. These could be stolen. Identity theft is extremely common. I need to verify with American Express that... He just grabbed it from her hand, someone typed in Maya's live stream chat. This is insane, another wrote. Maya narrated quietly into her phone. He's now claiming her legitimate cards are stolen. She's shown everything he asked for. Everything. A black woman in a Navy business suit stood up. Keisha Williams, 35, corporate attorney. I've been watching this whole thing. She showed you everything. Let her fly. A young white woman joined Maya's angle, filming from another perspective. Sarah Brighton, 27, graphic designer. An Indian-American man in surgical scrubs set down his coffee. Dr. Raj Patel, 45. This is discrimination. I'm a witness if she needs one. But the woman with the Hermes Birkin shook her head. He's just following protocol. Some people always make everything about race. The man in the Tom Ford suit folded his newspaper. I travel every week. Standards exist for a reason. You can't just let anyone in. Derek's phone rang. He answered, putting it on speaker. Tom, I've got a situation. The woman refused to leave, causing a scene. His regional manager's voice crackled through. Is she threatening anyone? Violent? Derek looked at Naomi's calm face. She's being non-compliant. Disruptive. Then you have my authorization. Remove her. We can't have this in a premium space. Derek turned to the officers. You heard him. Escort her out. Use reasonable force if necessary. Porter hesitated. Sir, her credentials check out. I don't think... Are you questioning my authority? Derek's voice sharpened. Because I can make a call about that too. Officer Ruiz touched Naomi's elbow gently. Ma'am, please, just come with us. We can sort this at the gate. Naomi nodded slowly. Officer Porter, Officer Ruiz, may I have your names and badge numbers for my records? Both provided them without hesitation. Derek sneered. Oh, so now you're filing a complaint. Good luck with that. Naomi pulled out a small leather notebook, wrote carefully. Names, badge numbers, timestamps. Derek watched her write, his confidence building. What are you, some kind of activist? Journalist? The PA announced final boarding for Flight 4127. Derek picked up the desk phone. Gate C14, hold boarding on Flight 4127. Potential security issue with passengers in Seat 1A. Naomi was surrounded now. Security behind her. Derek in front. 2 staff members blocking the jet bridge entrance. 50-plus lounge guests watching. 12,000 people watching online. Derek leaned against his desk, arms crossed. Victory in his smile. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to apologize for wasting everyone's time, then you're going to miss your flight, and maybe we won't press trespassing charges? Keisha Williams shouted from her seat. This is illegal! Someone call a lawyer! Derek didn't even look at her. Feel free. Until then, she stays right here. Naomi took a long breath, set her tote bag down carefully on a chair. You're absolutely right, she said. Derek blinked. What? I should have been clearer from the start. Naomi's voice was steady, almost apologetic. I apologize for the confusion. Derek's smile spread wide. The Hermes woman nodded approvingly. The Tom Ford man resumed reading his paper, satisfied. Well, Derek said, magnanimous now. Thank you, that's all I wanted. Now if you'll just... Before I go, Naomi interrupted gently. May I make one phone call? It'll take 30 seconds. Derek waved his hand. Fine, make it quick. Naomi pulled out her phone. For a split second, Maya's camera caught the screen as she scrolled her contacts. The name was visible. Martin Rothschild Chair, Metro Airport Authority. Naomi lifted the phone to her ear. The line connected. She looked directly at Derek. Martin, it's Naomi Grant. I'm at Metropolitan Gate C. We need to talk about your VIP lounge management. 11:52 a.m., 5 minutes until boarding ends. Derek's smile vanished. Officer Porter's eyes closed briefly. Maya's live stream exploded. Viewer count 14,567. Naomi had put the call on speaker. Her voice stayed calm. Yes, Martin. I'm standing in your VIP lounge right now. The manager, Derek Whitmore, has been very thorough explaining your policies. Martin Rothschild's voice crackled through. Miss Grant? What happened? He's informed me I don't meet the standards for this space. Pause. I'm in Terminal B. 4 minutes. Whatever happened, we'll address it. Naomi ended the call. Silence filled the lounge. Maya's chat erupted. Wait, Naomi Grant. Is that the CEO? Google her now. Sarah Brighton pulled up her iPad. Found a Forbes article, held it beside Naomi's face. Same woman, headline visible. Naomi Grant, the $847 billion woman redefining ethical investment. The Hermes woman grabbed her phone, typed frantically. My face went white. She tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't cooperate. Tom Ford man pulled out his iPhone, Googled, read. His newspaper slipped from his fingers. She's Board of Directors, American Airlines, United Delta. His wife leaned over, reading. Metropolitan Airport Authority Board. Maya narrated into camera, voice shaking. Naomi Grant manages $847 billion in assets. She sits on this airport's governing board. She literally helps run this place. Derek tried to speak. His mouth opened. Nothing came. He tried again. I had no way of knowing. Naomi turned to face him fully. Her voice stayed quiet. No way? What would have told you? A designer suit, jewelry, a louder voice? Derek's two staff members stepped away from him. The blonde woman whispered urgently, I told you to just check her credentials properly. The elderly couple in Burberry coats stood abruptly. The husband grabbed their carry-ons. Dear, we need to. Maya swung her camera toward them. Oh no, where are you going? You just said she didn't belong here. They hurried toward the exit, heads down, refusing to look at anyone. The Hermes woman suddenly spoke up, voice desperate. I didn't say anything, I was just sitting here. Keisha Williams stood, holding up her phone. I recorded audio. You said, and I quote, some people always make everything about races. The woman's face crumbled. Derek found his voice again, frantic now. Miss Grant, this was a misunderstanding. A simple, was it? Naomi reached into her tote bag, pulled out a business card, handed it not to Derek but to Officer Porter. Porter read it aloud, his voice professional but strained. Naomi Elizabeth Grant, Chief Executive Officer, Meridian Capital Group, Board Member, Metropolitan Airport Authority, American Airlines, United Airlines, Delta Airlines. He looked up at Derek. Something like pity crossed his face. Naomi continued, her tone unchanged. Derek, you asked if I was a journalist or activist. She pulled out a tablet from her tote. The worn canvas bag had been hiding quality all along. She swiped to a document, turned the screen toward him. I'm neither, but I do sit on several boards. And I provided financing for infrastructure projects. She showed him a signature page. Complex legal language, dollar amounts with many zeros. Her signature at the bottom, dated 2019. This lounge, the entire VIP program, the terminal renovation? Derek stared at the screen. Meridian Capital provided $340 million in financing. We hold 18% equity in this terminal. She let that sink in. You've been working in a building my company partially owns for 4 years. Every paycheck you've received, partially funded by my firm's investment. The Tom Ford man made a small choking sound. Derek's hands were shaking now. How could I? You couldn't know, Naomi agreed. But you made assumptions. You looked at my clothes, my skin, and decided I didn't belong. Then you escalated, grabbed my property, threatened me with force. She paused. The question isn't what you didn't know, it's what you assumed. The Hermes woman stood suddenly. I tried to tell him. I said he shouldn't do this. Keisha's voice cut across the lounge. That's a lie. I have a video. You nodded when he said she didn't meet standards. Maya's live stream was being screen recorded hundreds of times. The chat scrolled too fast to read. Hashtags forming. #Metropolitan Airport Racism, #Naomi Grant, #VI Plounge Discrimination. Footsteps echoed from the hallway. Fast, urgent. A man in an expensive charcoal suit appeared at the entrance, slightly out of breath. Martin Rothschild, 64 years old, silver hair, chairman of the Metropolitan Airport Authority Board. His eyes found Naomi immediately. He crossed the lounge in 6 strides. Miss Grant. His voice carried the weight of someone who understood exactly how bad this was. I am profoundly sorry for... Naomi raised one hand, not rudely, just enough to stop him. Martin, please, let's handle this systematically. She turned to Derek. Tell Mr. Rothschild exactly what happened. Leave nothing out. Derek's voice cracked. She arrived, and I asked for credentials. Be specific, Naomi said quietly. What made you approach me in the first place? Derek looked at the floor. You weren't dressed like... I looked like I didn't belong. Continue. He described each step. Each word sounded worse when repeated. The grabbing of her bag, the assumption of theft, the threat of force. Martin's expression hardened with each sentence. When Derek finished, Maya stepped forward. I have the entire incident on live stream. 17 minutes of footage, 14,000 live witnesses. It's been screen recorded thousands of times already. Dr. Patel spoke up. I'll provide a written statement. This was clear racial profiling. Keisha added, I fly every week for work. I've never seen him check credentials this aggressively, certainly not with white passengers in casual clothes. The Tom Ford man tried to edge toward the exit. Stay, Naomi said. Not loudly, but he froze. She looked at Martin. We need to talk, but first, she checked her watch. I have a flight to catch. Martin immediately picked up the desk phone. Gate C14, this is Martin Rothschild. Hold flight 4127 for Miss Grant, VIP passenger. Yes, I'm aware it's past final boarding. Hold the flight. He hung up. I turned to Naomi. Your flight will wait. Take whatever time you need. Naomi nodded once. Then she turned to face the entire lounge. Her voice carried without shouting. I want everyone here to understand something. I didn't reveal who I was immediately because I wanted to see how far this would go. I wanted to see if credentials would matter, if respect was possible without status. She gestured to her sweatshirt, her jeans. I shouldn't need to be a CEO to be treated with dignity. A janitor wearing the same outfit with valid credentials deserves the exact same respect. The lounge was absolutely silent. But since we're here and since status apparently matters, she looked at Derek, then at the passengers who'd supported him. Let me be very clear about the consequences. She pulled up her tablet again, opened a spreadsheet. Martin, Derek stopped 47 passengers in this lounge last year. 41 were black, Latino, or Asian. 6 were white, all elderly or disabled. 0 white passengers aged 25 to 55 in business casual. Martin's face went ashen. Those numbers represent a clear pattern. Title VI violations carry federal penalties up to $50,000 per incident. She looked at Derek. Your employment contract, Section 12, allows immediate termination for discrimination. I reviewed it when we financed this terminal. Derek's knees buckled slightly. Naomi turned to the Hermes woman, the Tom Ford man. You weren't employees, but you were complicit. You used privilege, expensive clothes, the right appearance, to support discrimination. The Hermes woman's face was streaked with tears. I have your faces on camera, Maya said quietly. And your words. Naomi checked her watch one final time. Martin, I need to board, but we're not done. I'll be back in 72 hours. We're going to fix this, all of it. She picked up her tote bag, collected her belongings, straightened her Yale sweatshirt. Then she walked toward the jet bridge. Officers Porter and Ruiz stepped aside respectfully. Derek stood frozen. Martin stood frozen. 50 passengers stood frozen. Only Maya kept her camera rolling. Viewer count, 31,204. 3 hours later, London Heathrow, British Airways first-class lounge. Naomi sat in a quiet corner, laptop open. Her flight had been smooth. No one had questioned her presence here. The lounge attendant had greeted her by name. Her phone buzzed. Text from Martin. Can we talk? I've begun an internal review. She didn't reply yet. Instead, she opened her tablet, pulled up the file she'd been preparing for 3 months. Maya's live stream had gone viral. 4.7 million views across platforms. News outlets were calling. CNN, BBC, the New York Times, local stations in every major city. But Naomi wasn't interested in media attention. She was interested in systems. She opened a spreadsheet. Data she'd requested from Metropolitan Airport in January, months before this incident. Passenger complaint logs, demographics of credential checks across all terminals, staff training records, promotion patterns. The numbers told a story Derek didn't know he was part of. She made 3 phone calls. First, her general counsel at Meridian Capital. Pull our investment agreements with Metropolitan Airport Authority. Every clause. I want to know our leverage points. Second, her head of ESG compliance. Environmental, social, governance audit of Metropolitan. Full scope. I want it on my desk in 48 hours. Third, her executive assistant. Clear my schedule for Friday. I'm flying back early. Book the Airport Authority boardroom for 2 p.m. Then she texted Martin. Friday, 2 p.m., boardroom. Bring your COO, HR director, and legal counsel, non-negotiable. His reply came in seconds. We'll be there. Naomi closed her laptop, sipped her tea. The lounge around her was quiet, civilized. Everyone belonged because everyone was treated like they belonged. She thought about Derek, about the Hermes woman, about the Tom Ford man. They weren't monsters. They were symptoms, and she was about to cure the disease. Friday, 1:58 p.m., Metropolitan Airport Authority boardroom. Martin sat at the head of the table. Beside him, Jennifer Cow, COO, Robert Mills, HR Director, Patricia Vance, General Counsel. All four looked like they hadn't slept. Naomi entered at exactly 2 o'clock. Same Yale sweatshirt, same jeans, same white sneakers. Patricia Vance's eyes widened slightly. A test. Naomi registered the reaction. Thank you for meeting on short notice. Naomi set her tablet on the table. I didn't sit still. Miss Grant, Martin began, I want to start by saying Derek Whitmore has been terminated. Effective immediately. No severance. We've also suspended. Naomi held up one hand. I know. I reviewed the termination paperwork. Section 12, Clause 4, you followed protocol. She paused. But Derek isn't the problem. He's a symptom. She tapped her tablet. The boardroom screen lit up. A presentation loaded. I'm going to show you what systemic discrimination looks like. Then I'm going to tell you how to fix it. Then you're going to implement every single recommendation. Or, she looked at Patricia, Meridian Capital will exercise our early repayment clause. Patricia's face went pale. That's $340 million. We can't. I know you can't. So let's fix the problem. Naomi advanced the first slide. Credential checks, Metropolitan Airport VIP lounges 2024, 473 total checks across 5 terminals. Derek's Lounge, 47 checks. Terminal A, 91. Terminal D, 138. Next slide. Demographics, 68% of checks, people of color. 32% white passengers, yet your passenger demographic data shows 52% white travelers in premium cabins. She let that land. That means people of color are checked at more than double the rate of white passengers, despite being the minority in these spaces. Robert Mills spoke carefully. Could that reflect different presentation of credentials? Some passengers don't have documents ready? Naomi advanced to the next slide. Security camera stills, time-stamped. White passenger, Terminal A, April 14th, casual clothes, no visible credentials, walk directly to the buffet, no one approaches, stay 40 minutes. Next image. Black passenger, same terminal, April 14th, 20 minutes later, business suit, visible priority pass lanyard, stopped within 90 seconds, checked twice. Robert said nothing. These patterns, Naomi continued, create legal exposure under Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. Federal funding, $127 million annually, is contingent on non-discrimination compliance. Jennifer Cow leaned forward. What are you proposing? Naomi advanced to a new section. 7 requirements, all non-negotiable. Requirement 1, personnel. Derek Whitmore is terminated, but he's not alone. I want full performance reviews of all VIP lounge managers. Anyone with disproportionate credential check patterns, audit and retrain. Second offense, termination. Requirement 2, financial accountability. Derek's would-be severance, $45,000 donated to NAACP Legal Defense Fund. Metropolitan matches it, $90,000 total. Requirement 3, training. Every customer-facing employee, not online modules, in-person, 8-hour anti-bias training, external facilitator Dr. Linda Washington, quarterly refreshers. Attendance is mandatory for continued employment. Martin was taking notes. Fast. Requirement 4, technology and oversight. Install visible cameras with audio in all VIP lounges. Footage reviewed weekly by a diversity committee, which you'll create. Anonymous passenger reporting system. QR codes at every table. Requirement 5, data transparency. Monthly demographic reports on all credential checks. Race, gender, age, any statistical anomalies trigger automatic review. Data presented at every quarterly board meeting. She paused. I attend those meetings. Requirement 6, passenger accountability. Signage in every lounge. If you witness discrimination, report it. Silence is complicity. Passengers who actively support discriminatory behavior, documented, receive formal warnings. Repeat offenders banned from VIP lounges for 12 months. Patricia looked up sharply. We can't ban paying customers without... You can, Naomi said. Your terms of service, Section 8. Management reserves the right to refuse service for conduct detrimental to other passengers. I wrote that clause into your revised TOS when we financed the expansion. Patricia closed her mouth. Requirement 7, leadership diversity. I want a black woman in senior airport operations leadership within 90 days, not a token hire, a qualified professional with budget authority, minimum $5 million decision-making power. She closed her tablet. Those are my terms. You have 30 days to implement items 1 through 4, 60 days for 5 through 7. Martin set down his pen. And if we comply? Then Meridian Capital continues our investment. We support your next expansion. We use this as a case study for other airports. And if we don't, then I call the loan. You halt construction. You explain to the FAA why you lost federal funding, and I testify in every discrimination lawsuit that follows. The room was silent. I don't want to destroy this airport, Naomi said quietly. I want to fix it, but I will not allow my firm's capital to support discrimination. Choose. Martin looked at Jennifer, Robert, Patricia. Some unspoken communication passed between them. He turned back to Naomi. Everything you've outlined is reasonable and necessary. We'll implement all 7 requirements. Good. Naomi picked up her tablet. I'll audit compliance on day 31 and day 61. Miss a deadline, we revisit the conversation. She walked toward the door, stopped, turned back. One more thing. The passengers who supported Derek, the Hermes woman, the Tom Ford man, the Burberry couple, they're in your frequent flyer database. Flag their accounts. First warning, next incident, they're banned. Patricia nodded slowly. Oh, and Martin? Naomi's voice softened slightly. The 3 passengers who defended me, Maya Lane, Keisha Williams, Dr. Raj Patel, 50,000 bonus miles each. Lifetime VIP lounge access, all your partner airports. Send it with a personal note. Martin smiled for the first time. Already done. This morning. Naomi nodded. Then we're finished here. She left the boardroom. The door closed softly behind her. Inside, the 4 executives sat in silence. Finally, Jennifer spoke. How did we not know she was on the board? Martin rubbed his eyes. We knew. We just forgot that board members are also human beings who use our facilities. Patricia gathered her files. We have 30 days. I suggest we start now. They did. Day 15. Metropolitan Airport, Terminal C. Martin stood in the VIP lounge at 6 a.m., watching the installation crew mount the final camera. Visible, deliberate, a black dome with a small red light. Beneath it, a placard. This area is monitored for customer protection and staff accountability. Jennifer Cow walked in with a clipboard. All 5 terminals are done by tonight. QR codes on tables tomorrow. Training schedule? Martin asked. Dr. Washington starts Monday. We've blocked 8-hour sessions. First group, 40 employees. Derek's former staff go first. Martin nodded. And the committee? Forming now. 3 board members, 2 passenger advocates, 1 external HR consultant. First meeting Friday. His phone buzzed. Text from Naomi. Progress report? He typed back. On schedule. All deadlines will be met. Her reply was immediate. Good. I'm watching. Day 22. Dr. Linda Washington's training session. 40 employees sat in a conference room, VIP lounge staff from all terminals. Some looked defensive. Others were exhausted. A few genuinely curious. Dr. Washington stood at the front. 60 years old, black woman, gray locks pulled back. Presence that commanded without demanding. Let me be clear, she began. I'm not here to make you feel guilty. I'm here to make you better. She clicked to the first slide. Security footage. White man in shorts and a t-shirt walking into Terminal A lounge. No one stopped him. Next slide. Black woman in a blazer, same terminal, 30 minutes later. Stopped before she reached a chair. What's the difference? Dr. Washington asked. Silence. Both had valid credentials, both belonged, but only one was checked. Why? A young white woman raised her hand hesitantly. We make assumptions based on what we expect to see. Exactly. And those assumptions have patterns. Let's look at the data. She pulled up Naomi's spreadsheet. The numbers are stark on screen. For 3 hours, they worked through scenarios, role plays, uncomfortable conversations. By the end, 12 employees were crying, not from shame, from recognition. One middle-aged white man, Terminal D manager, stood during the final session. I never thought of myself as racist, but looking at my check logs, I can't deny the pattern. I need to do better. Dr. Washington nodded. Awareness is the first step. Accountability is the second. Changing behavior is the third. We'll get you there. Day 28, Naomi's phone call. She was in her Meridian Capital office when Martin called. All training is complete. 147 employees. 6 failed the assessment. What happens to them? Naomi asked. Reassigned to non-customer-facing roles, baggage services, administrative work. They keep employment but lose lounge access. Good. Camera system? Operational. The first weekly review is tomorrow. Reporting system? QR codes active. 18 reports filed so far. 17 were resolved within 24 hours. 1 escalated, involved a gate agent, not lounge staff. We're investigating. Naomi made a note. And the ban list? Hermes woman, Tom Ford man, Burberry couple, all formally notified. 1-year probation, any repeat behavior, permanent ban from all VIP facilities. They respond? Tom Ford's lawyer called, threatened to sue. Patricia reminded him we have video evidence and terms of service authority. He withdrew the threat. Naomi allowed herself a small smile. Demographic data? First monthly report attached to this call. You'll have it in your inbox now. She pulled it up on her laptop while they talked, scanned the numbers. Credential checks dropped 63% overall, she observed. We implemented a new policy, Martin explained. Universal protocol. Either check everyone or no one. Can't be selective. Most managers chose universal barcode scanning at entry. Faster, fairer, no discretion involved. Complaints? Down 71%. Customer satisfaction scores up 23%. Naomi leaned back in her chair. You're ahead of schedule. We have to be. Day 31 is in 3 days. You said you'd audit. I will. Day 31. Naomi returns. She arrived at Metropolitan at 11 a.m. Unannounced. Same Yale sweatshirt, same jeans, same white sneakers. I walked into the Terminal C VIP lounge. A new manager stood at the entrance. Black woman, early 40s, professional but warm. Name tag, Keisha Williams. Keisha's eyes widened in recognition, then composed herself, smiled. Good morning. Welcome to our VIP lounge. May I scan your boarding pass? Naomi handed her phone over. Keisha scanned it, nodded. You're all set, Miss Grant. Please make yourself comfortable. Can I get you anything? Coffee, tea? I'm fine, thank you. Naomi walked to the same chair she'd sat in 4 weeks ago, set down her tote bag, pulled out her tablet. Around her, the lounge hummed with quiet activity. A white man in a hoodie and jeans sat nearby, reading. No one had questioned him. An elderly Latina woman in casual clothes enjoyed the buffet. No one approached. At the entrance, a young Asian man in a business suit arrived. Keisha scanned his pass with the same efficiency, same warmth. Naomi watched for 30 minutes, counted 27 passengers entering, every single one scanned at entry. No selective checks, no assumptions. She opened her laptop, logged into the Diversity Committee portal, reviewed last week's camera footage audits, flagged incidents, 0, complaints resolved, 14 out of 14. Her phone buzzed. Text from Martin. I know you're here, cameras picked you up, how are we doing? She typed, come to the lounge, let's talk. 5 minutes later, Martin arrived, sat across from her. You hired Keisha, Naomi said. She was the obvious choice. Corporate attorney, frequent flyer, witnessed the incident firsthand, character beyond question. She started 2 weeks ago. And the senior operations position? Requirement 7? Martin handed her a folder. Sharon Okoye, former Delta VP of Terminal Operations, 20 years experience, just accepted our offer. Starts in 2 weeks. $8 million budget authority. Reports directly to Jennifer. Naomi opened the folder, scanned Sharon's resume. Credentials impeccable. You're under budget and ahead of schedule, she observed. Martin exhaled. Because you were right. This wasn't about Derek. It was about us, our systems, our blind spots. He gestured around the lounge. Look at this place now. It's better, not just legally compliant, actually better. Staff are less stressed. Passengers are happier. Complaints are down. It works. Naomi closed the folder. It works because you made it work. I gave you requirements. You implemented them seriously. You gave us no choice. I gave you exactly one choice. Fix it or lose everything. You chose correctly. Martin leaned forward. 3 other airports have called me. They want our reform template. Word spreading. Good. Send it to them. Make it public. No copyright, no fees. If this works here, it should work everywhere. You're sure? This was never about punishment, Martin. It was about change. She packed her tablet, stood. I'll be back at day 61 for the final audit, but based on today, I'm confident you'll pass. Martin stood as well, extended his hand. Thank you, Miss Grant, for holding us accountable. She shook it. Thank you for listening. As she walked toward the exit, Keisha approached. Miss Grant? Keisha's voice was soft. I just wanted to say thank you for what you did, for all of us who've been where you were. Naomi met her eyes. You defended me when it mattered, when no one else would. That took courage. This, she gestured at Keisha's name tag, is just recognition of what you already had. Keisha's eyes filled. She blinked quickly, nodded. Naomi left the lounge. Walked through Terminal C, past gate agents who smiled, past passengers who didn't give her a second glance, past security who nodded respectfully. She looked like a regular traveler, because that's what she was, and for the first time in this airport, that was enough. Day 45, the ripple effect. Martin's phone rang, CNN, then the Washington Post, then NPR. The Grant Protocol has become a case study. Harvard Business School requested an interview. 3 members of Congress cited it in hearings about transportation equity. 47 airports adopted the framework. United Airlines updated their training. American Airlines revised their lounge policies. Derek Whitmore's name became a cautionary tale in HR departments nationwide, and Naomi Grant's live stream, Maya's recording, had been viewed 8.2 million times. But Naomi herself gave no interviews, made no public statements. She simply returned to work, managed her $847 billion, attended board meetings, reviewed quarterly reports. At Metropolitan Airport, the changes were made. Day 61 audit, perfect compliance, 0 violations, data patterns normalized. Sharon Okoye started her position. Within 3 weeks, she'd identified inefficiencies in baggage handling, improved wheelchair accessibility, and increased staff diversity across all terminals. The airports that adopted the Grant Protocol reported similar results. Complaints down an average of 61%. Customer satisfaction is up. Employee retention improved, not because of punishment, because of systems. And systems, when designed correctly, didn't require heroes. They just worked. For everyone. Day 61, final audit. Naomi walked into Terminal C VIP Lounge at 2 p.m. Same Yale sweatshirt, same jeans, same white sneakers. A deliberate test. Keisha Williams stood at the entrance. The woman who'd defended Naomi 2 months ago now wore a manager's uniform. Welcome back, Miss Grant. Keisha scanned her boarding pass smoothly. Professional. Warm. Your usual spot by the window is available. Naomi moved through the lounge, sat in the exact chair where Derek had humiliated her. The space felt different. Not in decor, in the atmosphere. A young black man in a hoodie sat at the buffet. No one stared. A Latina woman in yoga clothes read a magazine. No whispers. An elderly white couple in Burberry sat beside a Middle Eastern family in modest dress. Natural, unremarkable. Naomi opened her tablet. Reviewed 60 days of data. Credential checks, down 71%. Universal scanning at entry eliminated selective enforcement. Customer complaints, 12 total. All resolved within 24 hours. Demographic patterns, proportional. 52% white, 48% people of color. Matched actual passenger demographics, staff violations, 3 flags, 2 retrained, 1 terminated for reverting to old patterns. Her phone buzzed. Martin, boardroom when you're ready. Metropolitan Airport Authority boardroom, 3 p.m. Martin sat with Jennifer Cow, Robert Mills, Patricia Vance, and a new face. Miss Grant, meet Sharon Okoye, VP of Terminal Operations. Sharon stood. 47, black woman. Confidence. Thank you for making this position possible. Your credentials made it possible, Naomi replied. I just required the opportunity. Martin distributed folders. All 7 requirements met or exceeded, ahead of schedule, under budget. He walked through each point. Requirement 1, personnel. Derek terminated. 6 employees were reassigned to non-customer roles. 1 additional termination for non-compliance during the 60-day period. Requirement 2, financial accountability. $90,000 donated to NAACP Legal Defense Fund. Receipts attached. Requirement 3, training. Dr. Linda Washington had completed sessions with 147 employees. Pass rate, 96%. Quarterly refreshers scheduled. Requirement 4, technology. Cameras operational in all 5 terminals. QR code reporting system live. 62 reports filed. 58 resolved within 24 hours. Requirement 5, data transparency. Monthly demographic reports automated. 0 statistical anomalies flagged since week 4. Requirement 6, passenger accountability. Signage installed. 3 passengers formally warned. 1 new ban was issued. White passenger made racist comments to staff. 12-month ban, no appeal. Requirement 7, leadership diversity. Sharon started 3 weeks ago. $8 million budget authority. Already implemented 6 operational improvements beyond VIP lounges. Sharon spoke. I've identified systemic issues across terminals, wheelchair accessibility gaps, language barriers, TSA checkpoint bias patterns, addressing all of it. Naomi set down her tablet. You've exceeded every requirement. Jennifer leaned forward. Because you were right. This wasn't just legal compliance, it was about being better. Customer satisfaction up 23%, employee retention up 17%, 0 legal threats. 47 airports have adopted your framework, Patricia added. The grant protocol, Martin said. The industry named it that. Naomi pulled up a document. Which is why I'm proposing we formalize it. A non-profit foundation. Purpose, provide free training, oversight templates, consulting to any transportation hub wanting to implement reforms. Martin blinked. You want to scale this nationally? Globally, eventually. Meridian Capital will seed it with $5 million. I've secured matching funds, $10 million total. She looked at Sharon. I want you on the advisory board. Real-world operations expertise. Sharon nodded immediately. Naomi stood. The foundation launches in 90 days. Metropolitan will be the flagship. Other airports will visit, observe, learn. Martin extended his hand. You turned our failure into a blueprint. You turned accountability into action, Naomi replied. As she reached the door, Patricia asked, Why did you wait to reveal who you were? You could have ended it immediately. Naomi paused. Because if I had, Derek would have apologized to the CEO, not to a human being. He needed to see that credentials don't determine worth. She looked at each of them. And everyone watching needed to see it too. 6 months later, Maya Lane published a follow-up article. The Grant Protocol, How One Woman Reformed an Industry. She documented Metropolitan's transformation, interviewed Keisha, Sharon, staff, passengers. The data was stark. 63 airports had implemented the protocol. Customer complaints, down 61% average. Discrimination lawsuits, down 73%. Employee satisfaction, up 19%. 3 major airlines adopted similar frameworks. Maya's final paragraph resonated. Naomi Grant didn't need to reveal her power. She chose to, not for revenge, not for attention, but to prove systems can change when those with power demand it. Derek Whitmore lost a job. Thousands of travelers gained dignity. That's the trade that matters. The article was read 6.2 million times. Naomi never commented. 1 year later, Terminal C. Naomi sat in the VIP lounge, same worn Yale sweatshirt, same jeans, reading quietly. A young black woman in a college hoodie entered, nervous, first-class tickets clutched in shaking hands, scholarship award letter visible. She approached Keisha's desk hesitantly. I think I'm allowed in here? My ticket says... Keisha's voice was warm. Of course. Let me scan your pass. She did, smiled. Welcome. First time flying first class? The young woman nodded. You're going to love it. Buffet's fresh. The coffee bar's excellent. Make yourself comfortable. You belong here. The young woman's shoulders relaxed. She smiled, found a seat. Naomi watched this exchange. Didn't intervene. I didn't need to. The system was working. She returned to her book. Just another passenger, just another person. Finally, simply enough. Derek Whitmore never worked in hospitality again. LinkedIn showed 17 months of unemployment, then a logistics position in another state. Lower pay, no authority. The Hermes woman completed her probation quietly, never caused another incident, never apologized publicly. The Tom Ford man switched airlines, avoided Metropolitan entirely, but Keisha thrived, promoted twice in 1 year. Sharon expanded reforms to baggage claim, ticketing, security checkpoints. Dr. Linda Washington's training became industry standard, and the Grant Protocol Foundation served 127 airports by year 2, not through punishment, through systems. Systems that, when designed correctly, didn't require heroes. They just worked. For everyone. Naomi finished her tea, collected her tote bag, boarded her flight, first class, seat 1A. The flight attendant smiled. "Welcome aboard, Miss Grant." No one questioned her presence. No one grabbed her belongings. No one assumed she didn't belong, because the system finally worked as it should have all along. Dignity wasn't negotiable anymore. It was default. And that, Naomi thought as the plane lifted into the cloudless sky, was the only victory that mattered. 3 years later. Naomi sat in her Meridian Capital office as a Forbes reporter asked the question she'd heard 100 times. "Do you regret how you handled that day?" She set down her pen. "I don't regret waiting to reveal my identity. If I'd said I'm a CEO immediately, Derek would have apologized to power, not learned about dignity. The point was never about me. It was about the janitor in the same outfit who deserves the same respect." The reporter leaned forward. "The Grant Protocol is now in 247 airports globally. What's next? Train stations, bus terminals, public spaces, anywhere people are judged by appearance rather than credentials." What Naomi didn't mention was the data on her screen. Data that told a story more powerful than any interview could capture. Dr. Linda Washington had just testified before Congress. The numbers were irrefutable. 247 airports, 63 train stations, 18 bus terminals. Discrimination complaints down 68%. Legal costs down 81%. Customer satisfaction up 24%. Employee retention up 21%. The committee voted 14-2 to make the protocol federal standard within 18 months. Keisha Williams, the woman who defended Naomi that day, was now Regional Operations Director overseeing 12 airports. Officer James Porter trained every new security officer with a simple mandate. Your badge protects everyone, especially those with least power. Sharon Okoye had expanded reforms to wheelchair accessibility, language services, and TSA checkpoint procedures. Maya Lane's live stream has been viewed 14.7 million times. Her 890,000 followers watched as she documented systemic change across industries. She'd built a career on that 17-minute video, but more importantly, she'd built a movement of witnesses who refused to stay silent. Derek Whitmore never responded to interview requests. His LinkedIn showed logistics work in another state, lower position, no authority over people, no public statements, no apologies, just silence and hopefully different behavior. The Hermes woman completed her probation without incident. The Tom Ford man switched airlines. They'd been complicit, and while they'd faced consequences, the real victory wasn't their discomfort. It was what happened next. At Terminal C VIP Lounge that same afternoon, a teenage Muslim girl in hijab approached the desk nervously. First-class ticket to Boston, MIT scholarship orientation, first time flying alone. Am I allowed?" she asked hesitantly. The manager, a young Latino man, smiled warmly. "Absolutely welcome. Congratulations on MIT. That's incredible." He scanned her pass. "Make yourself comfortable. Everything here is complimentary." The girl's face transformed. Relief, belonging. She found a seat, pulled out her physics textbook, and began studying. No one stared, no one questioned, no one assumed she didn't belong. At a corner table, a woman in a faded sweatshirt watched this exchange and smiled. Not Naomi, just another traveler who remembered when it was different. When belonging requires proving, when dignity was conditional, when respect depended on appearance, now it was default. The system worked. Naomi never wrote a book about that day, never appeared on television, never sought recognition. But her impact was measurable in ways that mattered more than headlines. Harvard Business School taught the Grant Protocol as required curriculum. 3 members of Congress cited it in equity legislation. Airlines worldwide revised policies based on its framework. She kept one photo on her phone. Not of Derek's humiliation, not of her victory. Just a candid shot Maya had sent her, that teenage girl in hijab studying physics in the VIP lounge completely at ease. A stranger Naomi would never meet. Someone who belonged without question, without challenge, without having to prove anything. That was a legacy. Not revenge. Not even justice for herself. Justice for everyone who came after. systems that worked for everyone. Power, Naomi had learned, wasn't about position. It was about choice. She'd chosen to wait, to document, to expose patterns rather than punish individuals. She'd chosen systemic reform over personal satisfaction. She'd chosen to use her influence to protect those without it. 3 years later, that choice protected millions of travelers. Every day, every flight, every person who just wanted to sit quietly and be left alone. Derek lost a job. Thousands gained dignity. That arithmetic mattered more than revenge ever could. Now it's your turn. You just watched how one woman transformed humiliation into systemic change. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Naomi had resources, board seats, influence. Most people facing discrimination don't. They have something else, though. Witnesses, voices, you. Every day, someone is judged by appearance, dismissed by assumptions, humiliated by bias. The next person might not have Naomi's power, but they'll have witnesses. What will you do? Comment below. Share a time you witnessed discrimination. What happened? What did you do? What do you wish you'd done differently? Your story matters. Silence enables broken systems. Speaking up changes them. Share this video. Someone in your network needs to see that dignity isn't negotiable, that systems can change, that power used precisely protects the vulnerable. Subscribe to Black Voices Uncut. Every week we document stories of resistance, resilience, and reform. Real people who refuse to accept injustice as inevitable. Here's what Naomi proved. You don't need to be a CEO to demand change. You just need to refuse silence. Record injustice safely when you see it. Speak up when others stay silent. Stand with the targeted, not the comfortable, because real power isn't in boardrooms. It's in the collective decision to say, not here, not anymore, not to anyone. Systems change when enough people demand it. Be the witness, be the voice, be the change. You have more power than you think. Use it.
The story you heard today wasn't cleaned up. It was told exactly as it happened. At Black Voices Uncut, we believe that's the only way truth can live. If you felt something, hit like, comment, and your reaction, and subscribe. Every week, we bring you voices that refuse to be silenced.
Look at that ghetto girl trying to play intellectual. Does she even know which fork to use at dinner? The Harvard debate captain's sneer sliced through the mahogany-paneled auditorium. Sarah Johnson, the only black competitor from South Chicago Community College, flinched as laughter rippled through the front row. She gripped her pen until her knuckles paled, shoulders squared beneath her thrift store blazer. Her eyes never left her notes. That calculated cruelty would boomerang spectacularly when, 20 minutes later, Sarah would stride to the podium and silence the entire hall, her steady voice exposing an email thread the privileged captain never imagined would surface. Blood drained from his face as she methodically dismantled his career. By nightfall, the National Collegiate Debate Association delivered its first-ever sanction against Harvard. The timestamp on that damning evidence? 3:14 a.m., precisely when Sarah was changing IVs during her hospital night shift. What invisible weapon did this 19-year-old possess that would shatter Harvard's dynasty? Sarah Johnson hadn't planned to be a debater. Growing up in South Chicago meant planning for survival, not trophies. At 19, she juggled night shifts at Mercy Hospital with classes at Southside Community College, sending half her paycheck home to her mother and younger siblings. Her debate coach, Ernesto Martinez, had discovered her arguing with a political science professor after class. Not disrespectfully, but with such precise logic that the professor had actually changed his position. "You don't choose debate," Coach Martinez had told her that day, sliding a team application across the table. "Debate chooses you." He'd leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Remember Rule 3, Sarah. It'll save you when nothing else will." The Southside debate team was the first in 15 years to qualify for nationals. They called themselves academic refugees, brilliant minds who couldn't afford elite universities despite their talents. Michael was working 3 jobs to support his grandmother. Tanya had been homeless her junior year of high school. What united them wasn't just circumstance, but hunger. The desperate need to be seen, to prove their worth on a stage that had been designed to exclude them. The real prize wasn't the trophy, but the scholarship scouts who attended nationals. One perfect performance could change everything. Harvard University's debate legacy loomed large over the competition. 43 consecutive sectional championships, 8 national titles. Their debaters moved with the easy confidence of those who'd never questioned their place in the world. They traveled with research assistants, wore custom suits, and carried leather portfolios embossed with the Harvard crest. Their captain, Jackson Williams, was a legacy admission whose father sat on the university's board of trustees. His debate style was rapid-fire terminology mixed with condescension, a strategy designed to make opponents feel intellectually inferior before they'd even begun. "Look at their Instagram," Tanya showed Sarah her phone. The Harvard Debate Society's page featured a post mocking quota teams with a caption about maintaining standards in an age of participation trophies. Sarah handed back the phone. "They've already decided who we are. Let's show them who we actually are." The National Collegiate Debate Association tournament occupied an entire hotel conference center in Chicago. 5 judges, 3 from Ivy League backgrounds, would determine which teams advanced through preliminary rounds to quarterfinals, semifinals, and ultimately, the championship. This year's format included an unusual element: cross-examination periods where debaters could directly question their opponents. Coach Martinez gathered his team in their small prep room, actually a converted storage closet compared to Harvard's spacious suite. "This isn't just about a trophy," he said quietly. "It's about whether talent and work can still overcome privilege in American education." As teams gathered for the opening ceremony, Sarah felt eyes following her. She'd chosen her most professional outfit: black pants, white button-down, and a navy blazer from Goodwill that she'd tailored herself. Still, she couldn't help noticing the difference between her attire and the custom-fitted suits surrounding her. While waiting for the tournament drawing, Sarah overheard Jackson Williams speaking to his teammate. "Did you see the community college roster? They're actually letting these people compete." His companion chuckled. "Diversity initiative, probably. They'll be gone after preliminaries." Sarah pretended to check her phone, but her hand trembled slightly. Years of hospital work had taught her to read lips across rooms, a skill developed during quiet night shifts when patients needed monitoring without being disturbed. It was how she caught doctors making mistakes without confronting them directly. When the tournament director announced the preliminary draw, a murmur swept through the room. South Chicago would face Harvard in the first round. Jackson's eyebrows rose. Then his lips curled into a smile as he whispered to his teammate. What he didn't know was that Sarah had already begun recording every interaction on her phone for later study. Rule 3 in action: document everything. The contrast between teams couldn't have been more stark as they prepared for the first round. Harvard occupied a large corner table in the preparation area, surrounded by 4 research assistants and stacks of evidence binders. South Chicago huddled around a single table, just Coach Martinez and the 3 team members. "They have every advantage," Michael whispered, watching Harvard's efficient machine at work. "Except one," Sarah replied, carefully organizing her notes. "They've already decided they've won. That's their weakness." She continued her methodical preparation, unaware that this perceived disadvantage would become the key to exposing a system that had never been designed for someone like her to succeed. Would Harvard's arrogance finally cost them against an opponent they'd already dismissed? Coach Martinez gathered his team in their makeshift preparation room. "Remember what we discussed," he said, his voice steady but intense. "Rule 3 isn't just about documentation, it's strategy. Let them talk first, find the hole, then thread your needle." Sarah nodded, already familiar with their unconventional approach. While Harvard relied on overwhelming opponents with statistics and academic jargon, South Chicago had developed a method based on public records and institutional archives. Sarah's experience navigating hospital bureaucracy had taught her that every organization leaves paper trails. It was simply a matter of knowing where to look. "They'll expect us to be emotional, to make arguments based on personal experience," Sarah said, arranging her notes methodically. "We'll give them what they expect, then pivot to what they don't." The team had developed their preparation ritual during Sarah's hospital shifts. She'd record voice notes between patient rounds, and Michael would research while working night security at an apartment building. Tanya would compile everything during early mornings at the coffee shop where she opened. Their constraints had become their strength. They'd learned to maximize every minute. The tournament director stepped to the podium in the main hall. This year's preliminary round topic is Ethical Admissions in Higher Education. A murmur swept through the room. Sarah exchanged glances with her teammates. They couldn't have asked for a better subject. Harvard's team approached the preparation period with casual confidence. Their research assistants produced binders of statistics, court cases, and precedents. Jackson Williams barely glanced at the materials, scrolling through his phone instead. His teammates organized color-coded notes with practiced efficiency. 48 hours until the final round, Coach Martinez reminded his team. Every preliminary round must be won. The clock had started. For Harvard, it was simply another tournament. For South Chicago, it was a countdown to a life-changing opportunity. As the first debate began, the contrast between teams was immediately apparent. Harvard's opening statement featured Jackson Williams in a perfectly tailored suit, his posture relaxed as he approached the podium. The purpose of selective admissions, he began, is to identify students with the greatest potential for academic excellence and contribution to society. Objective standards, test scores, GPAs, and measurable achievements remain the most reliable predictors of collegiate success. His presentation was polished, confident, and backed by carefully selected statistics showing correlations between standardized testing and future achievement. The judges nodded appreciatively at his command of the subject. One wrote something in her notebook, seemingly impressed. Harvard's argument was familiar and comforting to those who'd benefited from the existing system. When Sarah's turn came, she approached the podium calmly. Her second-hand blazer was a stark contrast to Jackson's bespoke suit, but her voice projected a quiet authority that caused several audience members to lean forward. When we discuss merit in admissions, she began, we must first acknowledge that merit never exists in a vacuum. Whoa! Rather than attacking Harvard's position directly, she methodically identified the logical fallacies in their argument. Correlation confused with causation, selection bias in their studies, and the circular reasoning that defined merit by the very advantages they claimed to be measuring. Throughout her presentation, Sarah wove in systemic critique with personal narrative, not as emotional appeal, but as evidence of the practical consequences of theoretical policies. She cited statistics with precise timestamps and sources, demonstrating a memory for details that came from years of monitoring patient medications. The 2023 Brookings Institution study, published March 14th at 9 a.m. Eastern Time, found that when controlling for socioeconomic factors, the predictive power of standardized testing drops by 67%, she noted. One judge who had been seemingly disinterested suddenly looked up, visibly surprised by her command of the research. When cross-examination began, Jackson attempted to undermine her credibility with technical questions about statistical methodology. To his visible surprise, Sarah not only answered confidently, but expanded on limitations in Harvard's own cited research. If you refer to page 42, paragraph 3 of your second source, she said calmly, the authors themselves acknowledge this limitation. By the time closing statements concluded, the energy in the room had shifted. The judges conferred longer than expected, heads bent together in serious discussion. When they announced South Chicago had won by a narrow margin, the audience's surprise was palpable. As teams dispersed, Harvard's supporters clustered around Jackson, offering consolations that sounded more like excuses. The judges clearly wanted to give the underdogs a chance, one research assistant said, loud enough to be overheard. It's basically charity. The tournament director, however, had made a note on his tablet while watching Sarah's performance. His expression was thoughtful, interested in a way that suggested this wasn't merely charity. As Sarah packed her notes, Jackson approached. His smile was camera-ready, but his eyes were cold. "Enjoy your 15 minutes," he said quietly. We have ways of handling surprises in the elimination rounds. Sarah maintained eye contact without responding, mentally recording every word. As Jackson walked away, Coach Martinez appeared at her side. "This is where it really begins," he warned. "They'll come at you differently now. They weren't prepared today. They will be tomorrow." That evening, as the team regrouped in their hotel room, Tanya's laptop chimed with a notification. "You need to see this," she said, turning the screen toward Sarah. Harvard's research assistants had been digging through South Chicago's debate history, requesting records from previous competitions. "They're looking for inconsistencies," Coach Martinez observed. "Weaknesses they can exploit." Sarah nodded, already formulating her response. "Then we need to know their playbook better than they do." She began methodically collecting videos of Harvard's previous debates, noting patterns in their argumentation, weaknesses in their logic, and most importantly, the moments when Jackson Williams became defensive. She carefully documented each interaction with the Harvard team in her notes, creating a timeline that would prove invaluable later. What she couldn't have known was that this meticulous documentation, this adherence to Rule 3, would become the key to unraveling Harvard's entire strategy. As they prepared for the next round, would Sarah's unconventional background prove to be her greatest weakness, or her most powerful advantage against an opponent who had already underestimated her once? Sarah's alarm jolted her awake at 5:30 a.m. She'd managed only 4 hours of sleep after analyzing Harvard's debate patterns late into the night. Checking her phone, she found an email from the tournament committee with the subject line, "Important. Clarification of evidence standards." Her stomach tightened as she read. Effective immediately, all cited evidence must come from institutional sources with established academic credibility. Personal testimonies and non-peer-reviewed sources will be given reduced weight in judging considerations. The timestamp caught her attention. 2:17 a.m., just hours after Harvard's unexpected loss. Sarah forwarded it to Coach Martinez with a single question. "Coincidence?" His response came minutes later. "There are no coincidences in debate. They're changing the battlefield." The new requirements clearly favored teams with access to university research databases and academic journals, resources that community colleges often couldn't afford. South Chicago relied heavily on public records, first-person accounts, and open-source research. With one email, their strategy had been severely undermined. When the team gathered for breakfast, Michael looked up from his phone with a troubled expression. "It's starting," he said, showing them a debate forum where comments about South Chicago's surprise victory questioned their legitimacy. Sources close to the competition suggest the community college team may have benefited from relaxed judging standards, one post read. Another questioned, "How does a night shift hospital worker craft arguments that stand up against Harvard's resources? Who's really writing their material?" Sarah set down her coffee, her expression carefully neutral. "They're trying to rattle us." "It's working," Tanya admitted. "My social media is blowing up with people asking if we cheated." The tournament's second day brought new challenges. As Sarah entered the preparation area, conversations hushed. Teams that had been friendly the day before now avoided eye contact. The whisper campaign was having its intended effect: isolation. During their lunch break, Sarah received a text from her mother. "Your old high school teacher called asking about trouble at the debate. What's going on?" Before she could respond, another message arrived. "My supervisor asked today if you were the Sarah Johnson causing a stir at the debate tournament. Should I be worried?" The pressure was mounting from all sides. Sarah's mother couldn't afford any workplace complications. She was the primary breadwinner since Sarah's father had left years ago. The family depended on both their incomes. That evening, the team gathered in their hotel room to reassess. "Maybe we should just focus on making a good showing," Michael suggested. "If this gets worse, it could affect our college applications, job prospects." "He's not wrong," Tanya added. "I need that computer science scholarship. I can't afford bad publicity." Sarah stared out the window at the Chicago skyline. The stakes had never been just about winning. They were about futures, opportunities, doors that might never open again. The weight of responsibility pressed down on her shoulders. A knock at the door interrupted their discussion. It was Diane, Sarah's night shift supervisor from the hospital, holding a care package. "Thought you could use this," she said, stepping inside. "Hospital's talking about your debate. We're all rooting for you." Her unexpected support bolstered the team's spirits, but as Diane left, Sarah's phone chimed with an email notification from an address she didn't recognize. The subject line read simply, "They're not playing fair." The message contained just a few lines. "Check the shared debate server. Password is still the default. Look for prep files on opposition research. They do this every year." It was signed only with the initials JW and included a cryptic reference to correcting a family wrong. Sarah showed Coach Martinez, who frowned. "Could be a trap. Using stolen information would disqualify us instantly." "What if it's not stolen?" Sarah countered. "Let me check if this server is actually public." A quick search revealed that the National Collegiate Debate Association maintained a public archive accessible through library portals. The shared server wasn't hacked. It was simply an underutilized resource that most teams overlooked. Sarah navigated to the site and found a folder labeled NCDA Competition Materials. Inside was a subfolder marked Harvard 2023-2024, containing dozens of documents, all technically available to anyone who looked. Among the files were detailed opposition research documents on every competing team, including psychological profiles of key debaters. South Chicago's folder contained notes about their disadvantaged backgrounds and potential emotional triggers that could be exploited in cross-examination. Most disturbing was a document titled Competitive Advantage Strategies that outlined methods for undermining opponents through procedural challenges and intimidation tactics. It specifically mentioned targeting diversity admit teams with technical violations to reinforce their sense of not belonging. Sarah documented everything methodically, taking screenshots and noting timestamps. "This isn't just unethical," she said quietly. "It shows a pattern." As she continued exploring, she discovered draft emails between team members discussing strategy. One referenced opposition research that would neutralize the Chicago problem. Sarah's meticulous documentation system, developed during years of hospital work, now proved invaluable as she cataloged each finding. The quarterfinals brought Harvard's new strategy into sharp focus. South Chicago faced a different team, but Harvard's influence was evident in the judges' approach. Every citation Sarah offered was challenged on technical grounds: formatting, provenance, institutional credibility. "Could the debater please provide the exact publication time of that research?" one judge asked during her presentation. "And the institutional affiliation of all contributing authors?" Sarah had anticipated this, having prepared detailed citation information for every source. Her hospital experience had taught her the importance of documentation. Lives literally depended on it. When she produced the requested information without hesitation, the judge appeared momentarily surprised. These interruptions disrupted her rhythm but didn't derail her argument. However, they created the impression that her evidence required additional scrutiny, subtly undermining her credibility. Despite these challenges, South Chicago advanced to the semifinals. As the rounds progressed, education bloggers began covering what they called the David versus Goliath story unfolding at the tournament. One post went viral. "Harvard's debate team seems rattled by community college challengers." The increased scrutiny prompted tournament officials to issue a sportsmanship reminder to all teams, though no specific violations were mentioned. The statement emphasized the educational purpose of debate and the importance of respectful discourse, a clear indication that tensions were rising. Sarah's habit of recording the time and date of every interaction was proving more valuable than she could have imagined. Each time a Harvard team member approached her team or spoke about them to others, she noted it precisely. "Jackson Williams, hallway outside room 342, 3:17 p.m. Some teams won't advance based on merit." The day before semifinals, Harvard launched what appeared to be their final offensive. Jackson Williams formally approached the tournament director holding a folder. "We need to file an official complaint against South Chicago Community College for evidence fabrication," he announced, loud enough for nearby teams to hear. The accusation hit like a physical blow. Evidence fabrication was the most serious charge possible in collegiate debate. It could result in immediate disqualification and a permanent ban from future competitions. The tournament committee called an emergency meeting. South Chicago was given 4 hours to prove the authenticity of all evidence cited in previous rounds, a nearly impossible task given the volume of materials. Coach Martinez gathered the team in their preparation room, now eerily quiet as other competitors avoided them. "This is their nuclear option," he said grimly. "They couldn't beat you fairly, so they're trying to get you disqualified." As Sarah frantically organized their evidence documentation, her phone chimed with another message from the mysterious JW, this time with a single line. "Check the Harvard archive system. Search Preparatory Disadvantage Protocol 2023. The team debated whether using the tip constituted fair play. "We don't know who this person is or their motives," Tanya argued. "It could be a setup." "I won't use anything that isn't publicly available," Sarah insisted. "Coach Martinez is right. We use public information or nothing at all." A quick search confirmed that Harvard's debate archive was accessible through public library databases, part of an educational initiative the university had launched to demonstrate their commitment to open knowledge. Within the archive, Sarah discovered files labeled PDP, with dates corresponding to major competitions. The documents detailed strategies for creating preparatory disadvantages for opponents, including manipulating tournament rules, spreading rumors, and exploiting technical violations. Sarah's heart raced as connections formed in her mind. The evidence challenged by Harvard, the rule changes, the social media whispers, all aligned with the strategies outlined in these documents. With 30 minutes remaining before the committee's deadline, Sarah compiled their defense. Authenticated evidence trails, source verifications, and a careful documentation of the pattern of challenges they'd faced. She deliberately omitted any reference to the mysterious JW or the PDP documents, relying solely on publicly verifiable information. The committee deliberated for an agonizing hour. Finally, the tournament director emerged, his expression grave. "The evidence has been ruled admissible," he announced. "South Chicago will advance to the semifinals." He paused, then added, "However, a notation of concern will be entered regarding the questions raised." It was a Pyrrhic victory. They would continue in the competition, but under a cloud of suspicion. As the teams dispersed, Sarah noticed Jackson typing intensely on his phone, a small smile playing at his lips despite the ruling against his team. What was he planning? Despite their advance to the semifinals, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that Harvard's most dangerous move was still to come. The biggest challenge wouldn't be winning the debate. It would be proving they deserved to be there at all. As she watched Jackson whisper to his teammates, she wondered what new obstacle would emerge between her team and the championship. Would the mysterious informant's tips lead to salvation, or become the trap that finally ended their unlikely journey? The semifinal round drew the largest audience yet. University recruiters filled the back row, and several education reporters had secured press passes. Sarah noticed a shift in the atmosphere. What had begun as a typical tournament had transformed into something more symbolic, a David versus Goliath narrative that transcended debate itself. Tournament director Collins stepped forward, his voice echoing through the now silent auditorium. Today's semifinal topic is Information Access Equity in Higher Education. He paused, allowing the irony to settle over the room. As a reminder, all teams must adhere to the evidence protocol distributed yesterday. Sarah and Harvard would face each other directly this time. No proxies, no intermediaries. Jackson Williams sat with perfect posture at the opposition table, surrounded by his team. His father had arrived that morning, a distinguished-looking man in an expensive suit who now sat in the front row. Coach Martinez squeezed Sarah's shoulder. "Remember why we're here," he whispered. "Not just to win, but to change what winning looks like." Sarah had been awake since 4 a.m., refining her approach. Rather than playing defense against Harvard's inevitable attacks, she'd developed a strategy that would force them to defend their own institutional values. It was risky, but after everything they'd endured, conventional tactics wouldn't be enough. When Harvard opened, Jackson was predictably polished. He argued that information access was already equitable through public libraries, online resources, and university outreach programs. The problem, he suggested, wasn't access but preparation. Certain students simply weren't equipped to utilize available resources effectively. Harvard University admits students from all backgrounds, he emphasized, gesturing inclusively. Our commitment to diversity is evident in our admission statistics, but we cannot and should not lower our standards of academic excellence to accommodate those who haven't adequately prepared. Sarah listened carefully, noting his emphasis on standards and preparation, words that had appeared repeatedly in the PDP documents. When her turn came, she approached the podium with calm determination. "I'd like to begin by quoting Harvard University's own mission statement," she said, reciting from memory. "Harvard strives to create knowledge, to open the minds of students to that knowledge, and to enable students to take best advantage of their educational opportunities." Rather than attacking Harvard directly, Sarah methodically examined the gap between institutional values and practices. She introduced the concept of institutional hypocrisy as her analytical framework, when organizations publicly espouse principles they privately undermine. "When we discuss information equity," she continued, "we must consider not just theoretical access, but practical barriers. These include paywalled research, algorithmic bias in search engines, and perhaps most importantly, institutional cultures that determine whose knowledge counts as legitimate." Several judges leaned forward, intrigued by her approach. Sarah referenced documents not yet presented, Harvard's internal communications about outreach programs that were designed more for publicity than impact. The curiosity in the room was palpable. When cross-examination began, Sarah's hospital-honed composure proved invaluable. Jackson attempted to rattle her with rapid-fire technical questions, but she responded with precise, measured answers that reflected deep understanding rather than memorization. "You mentioned algorithmic bias," Jackson challenged. "Can you name 3 peer-reviewed studies quantifying this effect in educational contexts?" "Certainly," Sarah replied without hesitation. Gonzalez et al. In the Journal of Educational Technology, 2022. Singh and Wong in Computational Education Quarterly, 2023. And most significantly, Professor Jameson's study from Harvard's own Computer Science Department, published February 2024, which found a 34% discrepancy in academic resource recommendations based on user demographics. A murmur spread through the audience. Jackson hadn't expected her to cite Harvard's own research against them. His momentary silence spoke volumes. A visiting professor from Columbia University, seated among the recruiters, was openly taking notes on Sarah's technique. 2 judges who had previously seemed skeptical now watched her with undisguised respect. The audience, too, had begun recording key points from her methodology. Just as Sarah seemed to gain momentum, Jackson's confidence returned. He smiled, not his camera-ready smile, but something colder, and raised his hand to address the moderator. "We'd like to introduce new evidence under Section 8.3, he announced, his voice carrying a note of triumph. "Evidence that proves exactly who and what we're dealing with." The moderator nodded. "Proceed, Harvard." Jackson withdrew a folder from his briefcase, his movements deliberate, almost theatrical. "I hesitate to introduce this," he began, his voice carrying precisely the right note of reluctance. "But in the interest of competitive integrity, we must address a serious violation." He placed several printed pages on the document projector. Sarah's blood froze as she recognized what appeared to be emails from her account, emails she had never written. These communications, Jackson continued, show that the South Chicago team, specifically Sarah Johnson, actively sought to obtain Harvard's preparation materials prior to this competition. He highlighted a sentence. Need access to H's debate prep for nationals. Any way to get into their system? The alleged email was dated 3 weeks before the tournament. Another message supposedly showed Sarah discussing how to use the information. If we know their strategy before we arrive, they'll never see us coming. Gasps rippled through the audience. One judge was already making notes, her expression troubled. Tournament Director Collins stood, his face grave. This is an extremely serious accusation. We'll need to call an immediate recess to consider these materials. As the judges filed out, the auditorium erupted in whispers. Sarah sat motionless, shock rendering her temporarily speechless. These were not her words. She had never sent these emails. But proving a negative, proving she hadn't written something, seemed suddenly, overwhelmingly impossible. Coach Martinez gathered the team in their preparation room, his expression taut with concern. Sarah, tell me straight. Is there any truth to this? None, she replied, her voice steady despite the churning in her stomach. I've never sent those emails. I've never tried to access their preparation materials. I believe you, Martinez said immediately. But belief isn't evidence. Tanya looked up from her laptop, her expression troubled. The emails look authentic. They have proper headers, your correct address. Someone fabricated them, Sarah insisted. This is exactly what the PDP document described, creating false evidence to disqualify opponents. Michael paced the small room. But how do we prove that? It's our word against Harvard's, and they have the emails. The realization settled over the team like a physical weight. Everything they'd worked for, the scholarships, the opportunities, the chance to prove themselves on a national stage, all of it could vanish because of fabricated evidence they couldn't disprove. Sarah stared at her phone, recalling every conversation, every interaction of the past weeks. Then a possibility struck her. The hospital logs, she said suddenly. The first email is time-stamped 9:17 p.m. on April 3rd. I was working that night. There's no way I could have sent it. She quickly pulled up her work schedule and groaned. I was on shift, but it was my dinner break from 9 o'clock to 9:30. It's possible I could have sent something then. Coach Martinez studied the emails again. The IP address would show where it was sent from. If you were at the hospital, that would prove these weren't from you. How do we get that information in time? Tanya asked. Sarah remembered her meticulous documentation habit. Rule 3. The hospital has security footage of all nurse stations, she said. If I can get access to that footage, it would show I was with patients during that time, not on my phone. She immediately called her supervisor, explaining the situation in urgent tones. Diane promised to submit a request for the security footage, but warned it would take time, possibly more than they had. 30 minutes later, they were called back to the main hall. Tournament Director Collins stood at the podium, flanked by the judges. After preliminary review of the evidence presented, the committee has decided to allow South Chicago Community College to continue in the competition while this matter is under investigation. A ripple of surprise moved through the audience. It wasn't an exoneration, but it wasn't the immediate disqualification Harvard had clearly expected. Jackson's confident expression faltered slightly. However, Collins continued, should the investigation confirm these allegations, disqualification will be retroactive and permanent. They would continue, but under a shadow of suspicion that could nullify everything at any moment. As they left the hall, Sarah noticed Jackson's satisfied smile despite the ruling. He clearly believed the damage was already done. Back in their room, Sarah's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. The PDP isn't just a strategy. It's the name of a file on Jackson's laptop, and I can prove he created it on March 17th at exactly 2:36 a.m. The final round of the National Collegiate Debate Association Championship had drawn an unprecedented audience. The main auditorium was filled to capacity, with university presidents, recruitment officers, and national education correspondents occupying reserved seats. What had begun as a standard competition had transformed into a symbol of larger questions about access, privilege, and the definition of merit in American education. Tournament director Collins approached the podium with deliberate formality. Before we begin today's final round, I want to emphasize the NCDA's commitment to integrity, fair play, and the educational purpose of debate. All evidence presented today will be subject to rigorous verification. Harvard's team entered with the confidence of those accustomed to victory. Jackson Williams led the way, flanked by his teammates and followed by a new addition, his father, Richard Williams, who took a seat directly behind the Harvard table. The elder Williams' presence was unusual but technically permitted. As a university trustee, he could serve as a team advisor. Sarah felt a strange calm as she took her position. The previous night had been spent in careful preparation, not just of arguments, but of evidence that could change everything. The mysterious message about Jackson's laptop had led her down a path that connected all the disparate pieces of the past 3 days. Today's championship topic, announced Director Collins, is merit and opportunity in American education. The topic couldn't have been more fitting for the narrative that had unfolded. Harvard opened with Jackson presenting a compelling case linking merit to opportunity. His argument was sophisticated and nuanced, acknowledging systemic challenges while ultimately defending objective standards. We can recognize inequalities in our system, he argued, while still maintaining that excellence must be measured by consistent, quantifiable metrics. He then pivoted to a direct challenge of Sarah's credibility. In debate, as in academia, integrity is paramount. When competitors attempt to circumvent the rules, when they seek unfair advantages through improper means, they undermine the very principles of merit we're discussing today. Several judges nodded, clearly referencing the ongoing investigation. Harvard was effectively putting South Chicago on trial within the debate itself. When Sarah's turn came, she approached the podium with measured steps. The room fell silent, collectively leaning forward to hear how she would address the accusations hanging over her team. "I'd like to begin by addressing each of Harvard's arguments systematically," she said, her voice clear and controlled. She methodically dismantled their position point by point, demonstrating flaws in their reasoning and evidence. Rather than becoming defensive, she used their accusations as a framework to discuss something larger. "When we talk about merit," she continued, "we must consider how it's evaluated, by whom, and for whose benefit. Similarly, when we discuss evidence in academic settings, we must examine not just its content, but its origin, its purpose, and its manipulation." She introduced Harvard's own Academic Integrity Handbook, projecting key sections on the screen. Harvard University defines academic dishonesty as including the submission of false or fabricated information, she quoted. This definition appears on page 43 of their current student handbook. The audience sensed something building as Sarah methodically laid her foundation. "I'd like to direct your attention to the Harvard Archive access logs for the past month," she continued, displaying a document on the screen. "Note the unusual pattern of access to community college team profiles, specifically access to email servers through administrative passwords." Jackson shifted in his seat. His father leaned forward, whispering something urgently. "Library database timestamps show inconsistencies between when documents were allegedly created and when they first appear in the system," Sarah continued. "Particularly interesting is a document referenced in Harvard's preparation materials as the Preparatory Disadvantage Protocol." A murmur swept through the audience. One judge was taking rapid notes, her expression intense. "I hesitated to bring this forward," Sarah said, echoing Jackson's earlier reluctance with subtle irony. "But in the interest of competitive integrity, we must address a serious violation." She displayed her screen again, this time showing an email with clear header information. Email sent from Jackson Williams to Harvard team members dated March 17, 3:14 a.m., implemented PDP for Chicago team, created shadow emails, We'll plant before quarters. Dad-approved strategy. The silence in the room was absolute. Sarah continued with methodical precision, presenting authentication data showing original server timestamps. This email was discovered in the public NCDA archive, accessible to any competitor through the library portal. The document properties confirm its authenticity through the original metadata. Harvard's coach stood, preparing to object, but Richard Williams placed a hand on his arm, stopping him. Jackson's face had drained of color. That was theoretical planning, Jackson stammered. A hypothetical scenario, never implemented. The email includes attachments, Sarah continued, her voice steady. Draft versions of the very emails that were presented yesterday as evidence against our team. Created at 2:36 a.m., March 17th, weeks before they were allegedly sent from my account. Tournament Director Collins stepped forward. Ms. Johnson, these are serious allegations. We would need to verify this immediately. Of course, Sarah replied. The verification process is simple. All emails contain metadata in their properties showing when they were created, modified, and by whom. The Harvard team's laptop contains the original files with unalterable creation timestamps. A simple forensic examination would confirm everything I've presented. Richard Williams whispered urgently to his son, who had gone completely still, his expression frozen between disbelief and dawning horror. Director Collins turned to the Harvard team. Mr. Williams, we would need to examine your laptop to proceed. Jackson looked to his father, who gave an almost imperceptible nod. The calculated confidence that had defined Jackson throughout the tournament had evaporated. Sarah met Jackson's eyes across the room. The difference between us isn't our schools or backgrounds, she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the silent auditorium. It's that I came to win through preparation, while you came to win at any cost. The tournament director stood, his expression unreadable. In light of these developments, we will take a 1-hour recess for evidence verification and committee deliberation. All teams will remain available for questions. As the judges filed out, the audience erupted in hushed conversations. The power dynamic that had defined the entire tournament had been completely inverted in the span of 10 minutes. Harvard's team huddled in urgent discussion with Richard Williams, while South Chicago's team remained calmly at their table. Coach Martinez leaned close to Sarah. How did you find that email? He asked quietly. I didn't find it, Sarah replied. I was guided to it by someone who knew exactly where to look. The identity of J.W. remained a mystery, one that might never be solved, but their contribution had changed everything. The auditorium fell silent as Tournament Director Collins returned to the podium, flanked by the full judging panel. Their extended deliberation, nearly 2 hours rather than the announced one, had only heightened the tension. Sarah sat with perfect posture, hands folded in her lap, outwardly calm despite her racing heart. After thorough examination of evidence presented by both teams, Collins began, his voice grave, the committee has reached a decision unprecedented in NCDA history. He paused, surveying the room. Harvard University is disqualified from this competition due to deliberate evidence manipulation and violation of core ethical principles of academic debate. A collective gasp swept through the audience. Jackson Williams stared straight ahead, face impassive but ashen. His father had already left the room. Furthermore, Collins continued, South Chicago Community College is declared champion by unanimous decision of the judging panel based on the merits of their argumentation throughout the tournament. Coach Martinez reached for Sarah's hand, squeezing it tightly. Tanya covered her mouth, eyes wide with disbelief. Michael simply shook his head, a slow smile spreading across his face. The committee will issue a formal statement regarding procedures to prevent similar incidents in future competitions, Collins concluded. This championship is adjourned. As the formal proceedings ended, the room erupted in conversation. 3 university representatives immediately approached Sarah with business cards. We'd like to discuss scholarship opportunities, said a woman from Columbia University. Your performance demonstrated exactly the kind of analytical thinking we value. Reporters clustered around, asking for statements. Harvard issued a press release within the hour, expressing deep concern and promising to recommit to integrity in all competitions. The National Collegiate Debate Association announced that same evening a comprehensive ethics review of competitive practices with particular attention to equitable access to resources. As teams dispersed, Sarah found herself face-to-face with Jackson in the hallway. Their eyes met briefly. She extended her hand for a professional handshake, which he reluctantly accepted. "Rule 3, she said quietly as they shook hands. The confusion in his eyes confirmed he didn't understand, and never would, what had truly made the difference. The South Chicago team left the hotel not just with a championship trophy, but with something far more valuable: proof that systems can change when confronted with irrefutable truth presented with dignity. This story matters because excellence exists everywhere, not just in privileged institutions. If you've ever been underestimated or faced systemic barriers, share this video with someone who needs to hear it. The Beat Stories channel brings you these authentic narratives of underdogs who rewrote the rules and changed systems designed to exclude them. Did you catch all the clues Sarah planted throughout her strategy? The power of documentation, the importance of maintaining composure under pressure. These lessons extend beyond debate. Hit subscribe and the notification bell so you never miss our weekly stories of ordinary people creating extraordinary change.
They say it's just how the world works. We say, change it. At Beat Stories, we capture the exact moment when justice meets its match. Subscribe if you're tired of the same excuses wrapped in different uniforms.